everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. I am so thrilled to take you on a really fascinating journey today. We're going to look at a historical figure who embodied an almost impossible duality. We often think of history in super simple terms, right? A person is either a thinker or a fighter, a creator or destroyer. But what happens when a deeply spiritual poet is also the mastermind behind an armed revolution? Today we're exploring the life of Ram Prasad Bismil, a man who wielded both the pen and the sword with absolute precision to fight against the British Raj.
Just take a second to let this quote sink in. Freedom is not obtained by begging, it is earned through courage and sacrifice. This wasn't just some catchy slogan he threw around, it was the absolute core of his ideology. But here is the dramatic question that makes his story so incredibly compelling. How exactly does a young, spiritually inclined student of literature transform into the architect of one of the most daring train heists in Indian history?
Okay, let's dive into this first part, the poet and revolutionary. To really understand the man, we have to look at these dual identities.
So he was actually born Ram Prasad Tomar, and he was an incredibly accomplished writer who adopted a few different pen names. He wrote under Ram, he used Agyat, which means anonymous, and most famously, he used Bismil, which literally translates to wounded. And that really highlights his deep emotional pain over the colonial occupation of his country. He used his literature and his incredibly moving Hindi and Urdu poetry to express this profound, almost spiritual love for India. But make no mistake, while he was writing these beautiful verses, he was simultaneously operating in the shadows, meticulously plotting an armed resistance against the British colonial government.
Let's move on to his early life and influences. Where did all this intense drive actually come from?
Let's see how this builds across his short but hugely impactful life. He was born in 1897 in Shahjahanpur into a patriotic family that placed a massive emphasis on discipline and education. What's wild is that his major revolutionary activities were compressed into just about a single decade. From the Mainpuri conspiracy in 1918 all the way to his tragic execution in 1927, he moved at absolute lightning speed. But what was the specific spark? Every revolutionary has a catalyst, right? Well, for Bismil, it happened when he was just an 18-year-old student. He read about the death sentence passed on Bhai Parmanand, a really prominent Indian nationalist scholar. And the sheer anger he felt at the British justice system over the sentence pushed young Bismil to compose a fiery Hindi poem titled Mera Jaan, or My Birth. This wasn't just a poem, though. It was a personal declaration of war. It was his ultimate commitment to remove British control over India.
And that commitment very quickly turned into action. By 1918, Bismil formed an underground revolutionary group called Matrivedi, which translates to Altar of Motherland. He started organizing the youth, he distributed a powerful pamphlet called A Message to Countrymen, and he even conducted targeted lootings to collect funds for his party. This whole era culminated in what we now call the Mainpuri conspiracy. When the police finally cornered him between Delhi and Agra, this massive shootout happened. And literally, in a scene straight out of a Hollywood movie, Bismil evaded capture by diving into the freezing Yamuna River and swimming underwater. The police actually assumed he had died in the encounter.
Which brings us to forming the HRA. Bismil was very much alive, and after hiding out for a while, he was ready to step up in a huge way.
Now, what's really interesting about this period is the deep ideological split happening all across India. In 1922, Mahatma Gandhi suddenly halted the non-cooperation movement after a violent clash at Chowri Chowra. Now, while many people completely respected Gandhi's focus on absolute nonviolence, Bismil and his faction of revolutionary youths fundamentally disagreed. They heavily opposed the decision to stop. Bismil firmly believed that true, complete independence, Purna Swaraj, simply couldn't be achieved through nonviolence alone. He believed it absolutely required an armed struggle. Acting on that belief, Bismil traveled to Allahabad in 1923. There, alongside fellow revolutionaries Sachindranath Sanyal and Dr. Jadu Gopal Mukherjee, he helped draft the foundational constitution for a brand new revolutionary party. The aims and objectives of this new organization were famously typed out entirely on yellow paper, which laid the strategic groundwork for the rebellion that was about to come. That yellow paper birthed the Hindustan Republican Association, or the HRA, officially founded in 1924. And their goal was crystal clear: end British rule and establish a democratic republic in India through organized revolution. Bismil wasn't just a founder here. He was the district organizer of Shahjahanpur, and, crucially, he was made the chief of the arms division. Now let's shift focus to the tactical sword aspect of his life, the Kakori Train Action.
As the chief of arms, Bismil had to supply his network. So on August 9th, 1925, Bismil and just 9 other revolutionaries executed an absolutely flawless heist. Step 1, they stopped the Saharanpur-Lucknow passenger train right near the Kakori station. Next, they overpowered the guards using highly advanced semi-automatic German Mauser pistols. Then, they forced open the government's cash chest. And finally, they seized the treasury funds to finance the Indian freedom movement. It was this incredibly direct, humiliating challenge to British authority.
But wow, the aftermath was brutal. The British launched a massive, sweeping crackdown, arresting over 40 revolutionaries. And that included a lot of people who had absolutely nothing to do with the heist itself. This kicked off the Kakori conspiracy case, which was an exhausting 18-month legal battle, despite the massive efforts of a prominent defense committee featuring big historical figures like Govind Bala Pant. The colonial government was just absolutely determined to make an example of them, and Bismil was found guilty. Let's pivot back to the pen for a moment. Literature, philosophy, and unity. Confined to the barracks of Gorakhpur jail as a condemned prisoner awaiting the gallows, you'd think he would just give up, right? Not Bismil. He didn't succumb to despair at all. Instead, he spent his final days writing his autobiography, which was later smuggled out and published. And this brilliantly illustrates that his political philosophy went so much deeper than just firing pistols. He urged the youth to put patriotism above personal interests, to have the fearless courage to defend justice. He preached that social equality had to accompany political freedom, and he placed a massive emphasis on continuous self-education and strict personal discipline.
So the crucial point is this. Bismil didn't just preach these lofty ideals from a distance, he lived them every single day. One of his core teachings was that national unity and religious harmony were absolutely essential for India's progress. And this was grounded in his deep personal friendship with his revolutionary lieutenant, Ashfaqullah Khan. Bismil, a devout Hindu, and Khan, a devout Muslim, fought shoulder to shoulder. They stood as a living, breathing testament to Hindu-Muslim unity against colonial rule.
Together with his comrades, he helped immortalize a battle cry that would echo through history. Now, while this iconic poem was originally written by Bismil Azimabadi, Ram Prasad Bismil and his fellow revolutionaries recited it so frequently and with such fierce passion that it became deeply associated with him. Sarfaroshi ki tamana ab hamare dil mein hai. The desire for revolution is in our hearts. It became a unifying anthem for the entire Indian freedom struggle.
Which brings us to the final chapter of his story, martyrdom, an enduring legacy. 30. Just pause and let that number sit with you for a moment. Ram Prasad Bismil was only 30 years old when he was executed by hanging on December 19, 1927, at Gorakhpur jail. He was martyred on the very same day as his closest friends and comrades, Ashfaqullah Khan and Roshan Singh. But here's the thing. The British executioners entirely miscalculated. They thought they were extinguishing the rebellion, but they actually poured gasoline right on it. Bismil's ultimate sacrifice directly sparked a raging fire in the next generation of revolutionaries. I mean, he heavily influenced icons like Bhagat Singh and Chandrasekhar Azad. Today, his legacy is literally etched into the landscape of a free India. He's memorialized through commemorative postage stamps, beautiful public parks, and even a railway station bearing his name.
Which brings us to the final thought I want to leave you with today in this explainer. When we look back at the Kakori Train Action and the armed rebellion, do we remember Ram Prasad Bismil just for the sword he wielded? Or do we remember him for the visionary pen he sacrificed to fundamentally awaken the conscience of a nation? He gave up a life of brilliant poetry and literature so that others could eventually read and write in a free country. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm going to let that question linger, and I highly encourage you to keep exploring this unbelievable chapter of history.